Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of the Florida Sound Archive podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Kaiser. And for today's episode, I have on with me a very special guest. I'm pleased to welcome in Raf Classic. You may know Raf because he had spent so many years with one of the most beloved Miami bands and Florida bands, the Crumbs. He's also done a lot more over the years. Another band he was in, Cavity, and we'll get into a lot of other things that he has done through his musical journey. But Raf is here today to tell his story. Hey, Raf, welcome in.
Hey Jeff, thanks for having me, man. This is a pleasure here working with you and getting to know you and yeah.
Great to have you finally here because we're going to unpack your story and go back to the earliest beginnings through what you're up to these days. But I do know that you are no longer in Florida and that you're on the west coast of the country.
I
So,
am,
how
yeah.
has that been just in terms of the present day for you?
You know what? Believe it or not, man, it's been 16 years now on the West Coast, and it feels like yesterday, but here we are. Like I moved out, I think right after our last album in 2010. And yeah, moved out here to ended up in Long Beach on the coast, and it's been great, man. Obviously, I miss all my friends. I miss Florida, but yeah, just went out for a little change, and a year went by, 2 year went by, and 16 went by, and here we are. But it's been pretty good. Been involved in a lot of other stuff here, different things, and um, cool for the most part, but always managed to come back to Florida at least a couple of times a year. See all my friends and obviously the family and all that. So yeah, man, it's been I'm on the West Coast now, so 3 hours difference.
That's right. Yes, we are. So, well, it's so great to know that you're doing well and everything is going well for you on the west coast of the country in California. And glad to have you here today to relive some of your fondest Florida memories going back to the earliest beginnings. And that's where we're going to start. Thinking about your origin story, Raf. Talk to us about where you grew up.
Gosh, I gotta put a mental timeline together, but you know. I grew up in Miami, but I came here when I was like 13, 14. Before that, as a child, I lived in South America, in Peru, and I got a sort of like a little taste of like a little bit of music there. I lived in a coastal neighborhood where a lot of kids listen to like thrash metal and stuff like that. Um, it was a little bit of a surf community, skate community, so. That was kind of like a little bit of an intro as far as like what music would take me. But um, when I got to Miami, it was 80, like January 1st, I think 86. Just moved to Miami, lived with my grandparents in a Coconut Grove area, which is kind of like an artsy neighborhood. My brothers and I were like, we were really into like BMX at that time, 13, 14 years old. I remember there was a lot of skater kids in the neighborhood. And right away, we kind of like, we became skaters. And I remember all of them listening to punk rock. They had the funky haircuts. We became super tight, and we had a pretty good crew. Something that it was a little bit different from life in South America. This was definitely more, it was more flashy. It was more gung ho. So it was pretty cool, man. That really made an impact on like me and my brothers, and me and my brothers were pretty tight and kind of like the same age. So yeah, we'd get together, with my garage, my grandparents' garage. We would build little lunch ramps. All the kids would come in with, spray painted. Someone always had a tape player, with like suicidal tendencies or misfits or like Dead Kennedys and Minor Threat, all that stuff. All the early stuff from the '80s.
Sure. And I imagine that stuff was very different than perhaps even some of the music that your parents could have been listening to. Did they have any influence or any other family as far as music goes?
It's weird. Like, I'm kind of like the only family member that is a musician. I do have a cousin that he's a classical music director, but other than that, I was kind of the oddity, not in a bad way, but my parents were not really into music. Neither my immediate family back then. So yeah, it's kind of like a unique situation. Yeah, they had some records and stuff, and probably the latest stuff, but it wasn't. They were not committed to music or that kind of world at all.
Sure. Did you have any early concert experiences at your early age?
Well, you know what? Yeah, I mean, like once once with this not early age, I would say, like, although yeah, I remember this was like, when was this? Maybe '84. We visited Miami. One of my cousins who grew up in the States, he picked us up, me and my brothers, and he was older. By older, I mean 16. So he had a big mullet. He was he was a hair metal guy, you know what I mean? Like, he picked us up in a Camaro and took us out. There was a spot called the Hollywood Sportatorium. It was all like, it was a big spot, but it was bleachers and dirt. And there was a band playing. It was Iron Maiden. And that was kind of like my first, big show, so to speak. It wasn't that big back then, but that was a good experience.
Oh, I bet. I mean, that's a great first experience, I would say.
Yeah, I know. What tour was that? I think it was maybe a Powerslave, one of those.
Sure.
But anyway, when I finally moved back, obviously, with this whole skate scene and all this stuff, I think there was a lot of kids that were, really into punk rock, and like, that got us like very deep into like the music and like, discovering new things and, the haircuts and all that. I remember we'd hop on the fence and take the metro rail downtown in Miami Beach. And, back then there was only bumps and not very busy at all, actually. And, in fact, Miami Beach, it was a total dump. And that was sort of our playground. Like, sometimes we would end up in a house party, kind of word of mouth thing. And we ended up with all these kind of like, there was all these hardcore punk bands playing. And dude, when I saw that, I was like, shit, I was like mesmerized. I was like, dude, no way. It was like, I was really transformed. It was like one of those things where like, dude, these are not like rock and roll stars in a big stage. These people are just like, they're just like us,
Right. Do any of those early bands that you saw come to mind? Any of them?
Absolutely. I mean, I remember watching, I would say, FWA, FWA, for some people. Chocolate Grasshopper was one of those. The Believers, F-Boys. Gosh, a lot of bands. I mean, Bad Rep Skinheads. It was there was a lot of just house parties, random house parties, and most of these parties were inside. There was a keg, your usual fight. I mean, there was skaters and skinheads and punk rockers and probably a couple thrashers out there. But yeah, I mean, and it was a cool thing because most of these places were covered up with flyers, and the flyers were from remember the Cameo Theater?
Of
Yeah, so the
course.
Cameo Theater in Miami Beach, they hosted all this. I mean, it was just a ton of bands, and weekly those days, in '86, '87, '88, maybe they had 4 or 5 bands a week. So, I sort of started going to shows every weekend there. That was like the thing to do. That was the only place. The
Uh,
first show I saw, I think we all skated to the Cameo, and they had there was a huge fucking skate jam. There was skate jams back then, so like people would bring their launch ramps, set them up on the street, and just block off blocks, and there was just hundreds of kids, and the band that was playing was Blast. They were inside, but they had the doors open, and I was pretty blown away. It's pretty cool, man.
Were you in the pit for some of these bands, or did you kind of stand off to the side, considering you were
You
still
know
fairly
what?
young?
Yes, always. Although you gotta watch out because back in those days, I mean, there was a big scene of like bigger guys, mostly skins. I was friends with a couple of them. Some of the guys were a bit of the grid and kind of dangerous in a way. It was a rough scene. I remember it was like I've never seen anything like it. It was, first of all, there was no security guards, so everyone that wanted to go up stage and stage dive, it was a mess. I don't know if you've seen like footage of like a film called Another State of Mind, where like they play the warehouse and like all the kids are on stage and it's just a giant circle.
Right.
It was kind of the same vibe. It was pretty cool. But yeah, I mean, like I think the second show I saw was believe it or not, it was a Red Hot Chili Peppers, and dude, I think there was like 50 people there. I swear to God, and it was maybe on a weekday. I don't know if they had break out yet, but for some reason that show was not well attended, but it was fun. We got to see a lot of the early stuff. Kind of like I would say the last tours of the first batch of like American punk, like 80s punk, like Circle Jerks and the Ramones were there. The Cramps, Motorhead. I remember seeing Slayer there. Then you get to see the Damned that Exploited, and dude, everybody came through.
Yeah. Were you going to most of those shows, if not almost all?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
I mean, that was a thing to do. It was like, we would go skate over there. Somebody would buy a couple quarts that was 21, and we were pounding Schlitz in the alleys, and then we'd get right, and then we'd go back into the shows. It was a wild time, man.
Were you playing music at all yourself at this point? Any instrument, or were you just a fan?
You know what, Jeff? I was just a fan, man. I actually it wasn't shortly after after seeing so many bands. I'm like, dude, I really want to see like I really want to play something, and like I want to be part of this scene somehow, So kind of weird. Like I had a couple of bucks, and me and my friends, we went to what was this place? I think it was some guitar shop in South Miami. It's no longer there, but there was a $100 guitar, and the guy comes up to total sleazeball. He's like, "Hey man, you want this guitar?" It's like, yes, of course. And he's like, "It's only $100, but you don't have to pay everything." It's like, you can just give me $20. So we gather a couple of bucks, we give the guy $20, and he mentioned something about layaway. I was like, I don't know what that means. Who cares? And then we give him the $20, and I'm like, hey, so so I'm gonna take the guitar home. Well, no, it's like, this is layaway, dude. You gotta pay for the whole thing. It's like, what do you mean? It's like, yeah, when you get $100, you come back and you get the guitar. And dude, that was, I still laugh with my friends about that one, because sometimes they'll leave me a message like, "Hey, this is on layaway." It's like, you son of a bitch. But yeah, so I know weeks later, I finally, got the money, got the guitar. It was it was $100 guitar. It was new. It was a Kramer, and it looked all metal and stuff. I didn't really like it, but it was cheap. And yeah, that was kind of like my start. I taught myself how to play in my room. I had the room full of flyers, and I was like, there was a photo on Flipside of Vinny Stigma from Agnostic Front, and there was a close up of him doing the power chord, and I was like, the hell is that? And dude, I mimicked the whole thing, and dude, I did the power chord, and all of a sudden, my world just changed. I mean, by the way, I told him that one day, much later. He was like, "Get the fuck out!" I was like, "Yeah. That's a crazy story, but yeah, I mean, it's I was teaching myself to play guitar, and shortly after, me, my brother, and two guys from school, we put together what we had, and we started, playing in the garage. And we formed a band called Social Decay, but it was awful. It was one string, and the cops would come over all the time. My parents were pissed. That kind of deal, and that kind of fizzled, went away, and that was it. I think for my first try. So let's see what else, dude. Well, that takes me to after that.
What year about is this?
Gosh, that was probably I would say 89, around there.
Okay.
Yeah. I was teaching myself how to play guitar, then, through mutual friends. And it was a small scene back then. I met Dan Gorostiaga from Cavity. He was writing these massive, sludgy, heavy songs, and I like all sorts of music, and there was a huge kind of Sabbath, I would say revival going on in parts of the punk scene, and I was intrigued, and he put together his band, Cavity, and I played guitar. It was me. It was Rene Barge on vocals, and did this other guy, Joey Crawl. He played drums. I mean, one of the hardest hitting drummers I've ever seen. And dude, things moved quickly. All of a sudden, I'm playing guitar in a band, and
right.
We did a demo, and shortly after, it was a 7-inch. And
so, did you play on the Crawl demo before the band changed its name to Cavity?
Yeah. That was that was unreal, because dude, it was I've never been in studio before. It was oh, you gotta play now. I was and that was cool. Crawl didn't really. The name was changed pretty soon, so I don't know if we maybe played a couple of shows with Crawl, and it was Cavity. And
where was that at that you were playing?
Gosh, dude, I think we played maybe Y&T Records. Maybe a couple of places in West Palm Beach. I don't remember, Jeff, those shows. I know, maybe a couple house parties, that kind of deal. It was really small.
Yeah. You mentioned Y&T Records. Was that a record store, music store that you were frequenting even prior to performing there?
That was the only one. That was the only record store in Miami. There was Open Books, but that was more Hollywood, I think. That was the only. It was kind of fun because when you go to Y&T, kind of people used to hang out there and talk about records, and even people you didn't know. It was hey, who are you? It's I saw you at this show, I saw you at that show. I was well, here's a flyer. I don't know, it's pretty special. It was definitely fun, and I remember the owner, Rich, used to talk about hey, what are you guys into? He'll show us a record, and he'd be like, oh, I'll take the tape, and dude, he was him and people that hung out there were a big part of opening up kind of your different roads as far as the paths of different sounds within alternative music, punk rock, all that stuff.
No doubt about it. And that's one of the wonderful things about record stores is just the learning experience one could have by talking to the clerk or the owner or whomever. So as you were playing with Cavity, you mentioned going into the studio to record and talk about that experience a bit more. What was that like for you, considering this was the first time you were in a recording studio? Who was it with, and what do you remember just about that experience?
It might have been that we might have done like a small recording with Dennis from a Solstice. I think he had a small studio. I if it was a studio we went to, it wasn't established or it wasn't like known. It was probably somebody that knew somebody. Um, it was, I don't remember having a name, the studio, but I might be wrong. But
Sure.
I'm sure Dan knows all the details. But I mean, that's you're talking about, going back so long.
Yeah, early
It's
90s, right?
crazy. Yeah, it's there's it's a lot of time that's gone by that it's hard to recall all these things. But yeah, that was fun. The demo was great. The 7-inch I thought was fantastic. Dan wrote some really incredible songs. Renee was, I mean, just a total madman, and Joey was banging on the drums, and like we did a good job. When the 7-inch came out, um, my grandparents were over at my house, and my brother's like, "Hey, you know what? Raf released a record." It's like, I was like, "What, dude?" So I played that Cavity first 7-inch, and they were all like, "What the fuck is this?"
Yeah. And that was Scalpel. That was the first one, I believe.
Yeah, no, it was brutal. It was so brutal. I still love it to this day. But yeah, no, it was great. We did a couple of like kind of mini tours on the East Coast, all the way up to New York City a few times. I think we played ABC No Rio, which was kind of like uh, the place to go. Yeah, a couple of things. But as I started playing more guitar, I started writing my own songs, and as I wrote my own songs, and they were, I would say, like, they were more upbeat. They were more like a late '70s style punk, a little bit of the Ramones influence there, some Clash. And truthfully, I wanted to pursue a different route for myself. Still love Cavity and Dan, all those guys, but um, and it was around then that I met some of the Crumbs guys, Johnny and Amo, Chuck Luz, and it's sort of like once we met and we got together and we kind of like jammed in like some hole anywhere. Like things took off pretty quickly.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like it. So, as we're talking about just the origin story of the Crumbs, where did you all start to practice? And did you have any very early shows before you started to release any music?
Dude, believe it or not, like our first rehearsal spot was I don't know if you're familiar with Lincoln Road in Miami Beach. It's
Sure.
very bougie. It's like the top stores are there, but in those times it was a shithole. I mean, it was just bums everywhere, and like really, it was a ghost town, garbage, and like this guy Johnny Scumbag. He had a room on the second floor of what it is now. I think it's like one of the fancy stores, but it's on the second floor. We basically paid next to nothing, and yeah, we jammed there. We composed a bunch of songs. We came up with a name there. I think Amo was the one that mentioned that, and we kind of stuck with it. Um,
Do you know where it came from, the Crumbs?
Not really. Then it was kind of like our first sticker was a piece of toast, and then it was a crumb saying like, I think it was like society, and then leftovers, and it was just us. I mean, it was really like it wasn't the sharpest thing, but it kind of stuck, and like,
Sure. Who
yeah,
helped to design some of that early stickers, and what have you? Who was like the artist behind it?
dude, I would say right off the bat, Chuck Luz was the kind of like the director of the entire early Crumbs, like imagery and the sign and all that kind of stuff, flyering, and you got a lot of good stuff, man. But yeah, I mean, things after that they moved pretty quickly. We did a demo. Right after the demo, we did a 7-inch. We recorded in some like small studio somewhere in Hollywood. It was, I don't even have a copy, but I don't think it was well produced. But it didn't matter. Like right away, we went to like this studio, and Joe Queer from we were playing some shows with the Queers, and like Joe Queer went into like the studio with us, and like kind of helped us out a little bit. But we did most of it, ourselves, and it's kind of like a raw sound, but I like it. It's very upbeat.
Sure. What year was that demo recorded? Do you remember?
Demo, I would say maybe 93, 94, around
Okay.
there.
So that was like the very earliest recordings that the Crumbs did.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah, maybe there was like 6 songs, and our first 6 songs. Some of them made it out into the 7-inch, and some of them spelled out into. There was a 10-inch. Well, this is the first 7-inch that was on Reese's. It's got the Reese's logo there. Alien Girl was the opening song, and then shortly after, let me see. Yeah, so shortly after we went to Far Out Records. It was a local label, and this record came out. It was a 10-inch with 8 songs, but I don't even know what year is it. But
Did you know Tim Far Out, who owned Far Out Records at that time? Or did you meet him through
yeah,
putting out
yeah,
that? Okay.
yeah. Well, we've met. Like I said, dude, everything kind of happened very quickly. Um, one thing that was very positive that came about after the years of having no venues to see bands, because when the Cameo closed, there was a little bit of a void, and there was really no place to see bands. There was no venues. I think there was a kind of like a total DIY effort to like create something, create your own scene, come up with a venue. There was I remember now there was like punk picnics going around in the Everglades, and then Chuck Luz, he put together Garageland in Fort Lauderdale, and that was kind of like our own little South Florida Gilman, if you might say, like where like it just. There was a ton of bands that kind of sprouted from that little scene there, and it was a total DIY. Like we made the flyers, put somebody at the door. We sold a beer. We built the stage, spray painted. We wrote the songs. All the stuff, and like, that was kind of the second wave of like Florida bands that really took off. I mean, it was us against all authority. The Beltones. Gosh, Canadians, Hudsons, the Basics were there, Cavity, Class War, Cream Electric Santa, Boneheads. There was a ton of other bands. And then there was a couple other spots that kind of opened up, the Cheers in Miami, right below the rail station. And then the old Club Churchills, they started doing a lot of shows back again. Churchill's been open for a while, but there was a moment with nobody go there. Like it wasn't really a factor, and then all of a sudden it clicked, and for them it just it kind of became a big part of like the scene. There was a lot of also local bands. Everybody played at Churchill's, and then they started bringing in, bands from out of state, which was really cool. So,
Did you have any opportunities to open for any of those bands that were coming in and doing tours?
yes. I mean, I think with Cavity, we might have opened up with for like Rancid, if I'm not mistaken, in Washington Square. Early. Um, let's see. I mean, we did a lot of openings for like some of the bigger Florida bands, like No Front or like the Pink Lincolns. That had more of a following. Um, Gosh, we play with a ton of bands, but that takes me to like, that's kind of like when we started also going on the road a lot. The first time we were on the road, it was after our first 7-inch. And we followed this band from California. It was FYP, and they had a label, Recess Records. And, the tour was a national tour that would take us East Coast all the way up north, Seattle, back to California, and then, south back into Florida. So we got a van. This was a common theme that was going to happen, Jeff, going through the years. Our first exit, I think it was like maybe one of the exits in like Fort Lauderdale, Griffin maybe, but we broke down, dude. The van broke down. We got out of the van. I think, and then Emil, the bass player, who had a record label too. It was 4.5 Records. Great. He put out some great stuff early, but he had a tiny Toyota Corolla. Okay, so we ditched the van, and all 5 of us got into maybe 6 of us, because there was a girlfriend there. Got in a car with our guitars. We were young. We were like, oh, yeah, fuck it, dude. We're going to Seattle. Who cares? But how long is that? I don't know. And, that tour, it took us all the way to Gilman Street in Berkeley. And, that night we opened up for Citizen Fish, which is like kind of some of the guys from Subhumans, and they were kind of like big back then. And that was pretty cool. That was her first time in Gilman Street in California. And that's where we met the guys from Lookout Records. It was, they came out and we said hi. They liked the show. And dude, they was like, hey, we want you to do an LP right away. In fact, if you can do 2, that would be great.
Wow.
And we were like, we kind of contained, and then when we got to the Corolla, it's like, yes, dude, yeah, dude, we're Lookout Records. This is incredible, It's like like Operation Ivy and Green Day and Rancid and like Crimshrine, Mr. T, all these bands. Like, no way. It's like, yeah, let's do it. So, dude, we go back home, and right away we started working on what will become the first LP. That was this one here.
Yep.
Yeah, that one on the first Lookout label. That one was great. I mean, we ended up going to Sonic Iguana with this guy Mass. It turns out he'd been doing records for the Queers and Screeching Weasel and the Donnas. Anti-Flag and what else? Pansy Division, Squared Gun, a bunch of bands. I mean, it was an entire catalog of like incredible bands, and we were kind of stoked because we were like one of the first bands that was out of the state of California. And aside from Screeching Weasel and the Queers, were like the Crumbs from Florida. That was, I was kind of stoked about that. So it was a good moment. It was a good moment. So.
Sure. Is the leather jacket you have on the cover, is that the same jacket that's behind you right now?
Yes. Oh, this is pretty banged up, dude. But it's still there. It's an old Perfecto that I bought in Seattle on one of our tours, but it's all banged up, and you can see the sleeves The sleeves have barely any life in it, but these old Perfecto jackets, these are the ones that the Ramones used to wear. Dude, they last forever.
How many shows and tours has that jacket been through, you think?
Gosh, dude. I mean, I still use it, so you're talking
Wow.
about thousands. Yeah, thousands. So, yeah, it's all broken into. Dude, it's weird. Like people sometimes see me in that jacket and like, dude, like, can I buy that jacket from him? Like, hell no. Don't even mention your price. Like, this is not a jacket. These are memories.
Right. No doubt about it. That's why I was thinking, what kind of stories would the jacket tell if it could? It's been around so long.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I had to replace the front zipper one time, but that was the extent of like it. But yeah, no, it's been a hell of a journey.
did you have any other moments on that tour with any other smaller towns or places that either really surprised you by the audience's appreciation for the Crumbs, or perhaps maybe on the opposite end of that? Were there any shows that just didn't turn out very well?
You know what? To my recollection, dude, like I love touring the South. Tennessee, in states in Kentucky, places in Alabama, where like people were really there was just a warmth. They really took to us. A lot of times we ended up in like some of these people's homes, you know, um, super nice people. New Orleans shows were always fantastic. We used to stay there with a few bands. But overall, I think, God, we we stayed at a haunted house in Chicago one time, and after I think we were playing the Metro or one of the Fireside Ball. And then after the show, these kids came up. It's like, hey, you can stay at our house. It's pretty big. It's in the suburbs. Anyway, we get there, and it's this giant house. It's like, wow, how do these people how do these people afford this thing? There was like three or four of them, but it was like 3-story with a basement, Victorian. And dude, in the middle of the night, shit started to get weird. Cold, hot, weird sounds, some like weird nightmares. And I woke up in the middle of the night. It was like maybe 3 or 4 a.m. And none of the Crumbs were there. None of my band members were there. And I was like, holy shit, what happened? And finally, I heard a thump on a wall, and I was like, fuck this, dude. I'm going to the van. So I go to the van. I open the door. It was freezing cold. I open the door, and the guys were all there, like sleeping. And I pile in, and turns out next day, we take off, and dude, we started telling each other stories of the shit we experienced, and it was madness. I mean, the stuff that people saw and like heard and felt, that was unbelievable. And that's when I realized, like, oh, no wonder it's like these kids are there, right? Like, no one's gonna rent this house. You guys can have it. Yeah, that was pretty
That's
wild.
wild. Yeah, it
Oh,
is.
yeah, totally. Yeah, so that was around that time when, we kind of, finished the first record. We went into the second record with Lookout Records. We were doing the South a lot, and we kind of like got into a lot of the Southern sounds, not even like punk rock music, but just like a lot of stuff. The second record was recorded in Memphis. So by that time, spending a lot of times in New Orleans, Alabama, Tennessee, the Carolinas, Georgia, we started to get a lot into like more garagey stuff, a lot of soul music, stuff like that. So you could probably see some of those sounds on the second album.
Was that the Lo and Behold
Yeah,
album?
yeah, which is kind of like I always tell people, it was kind of like Lookout was not expecting that kind of sound, and I always say it was kind of like too punk for rock and rollers and too rock and roll for like the punk rockers. So um, it wasn't. It was a little misunderstood at that time, but nonetheless, a lot of people liked it. It was definitely another step for us. And it was also our first change of lineup. We unfortunately we lost Chuck Luz. We were in Chicago, and like it was a drunken night. We just played a show, and things didn't go well. It was probably the 20th day on the tour. The van sucked. There was a hole, and we were freezing. And we got in a fight outside, a physical fight outside, and it wasn't a proud moment. It was a very low moment for us, and we lost our beloved drummer Chuck, who was amazing, and he went on to do great things. But we were after that we were scrambling to keep this thing going, and fortunately, Marcio stepped in. We had been doing some stuff together with another band called The Basics. We did a little 7-inch, which Danny Lore from AAA put out, and that was pretty cool. But he went on to do the Crumbs, and then he stayed on until pretty much until today. But he was he was very proficient. He helped us kind of like do a lot more intricate stuff, still raw, but being able to do more changes and get the music a little bit more interesting.
Sure.
I would say, and by then we were getting bigger shows too. I mean, we were doing tours with Donnas, we were doing tours with Swinging Utters and the Queers and Teen Generate. Ended up playing with No Front, Pink Lincolns, Turbo Negro, a couple of times. And then things kind of escalated after that, and it was always kind of like, go, play a ton of shows in Miami, do a new record, different labels.
I want to talk about No Fraud a little bit more because Dan Destructo from No Fraud, he had worked with you guys quite a bit in the studio as well.
Yep.
And you even have a song about Dan too on one of the Crumbs releases. So just talk about that relationship and what was that like getting a chance to work with him?
Oh man, he's one of those like special guys. He's been on the road with us as a roadie. He's done the merch. He's a mechanic. Every time we broke down, Dan would get bottle the van, and he'll be like, "Hey, throw me a hanger. Is there a hanger there?" So I would give him a hanger, and somehow he'd do something and continue on. But the most important thing was that Dan had a small house in the woods in Venice, Florida, south of Tampa. He had a skate ramp there, but he had a studio, and all the demos we did was with Dan. Every time we had some ideas, hey Dan, we have some ideas. Let's shoot it up with you. And then we go to Dan's house, spend Friday, Saturday, Sunday, shooting some ideas. He had some opinions, but just good times. It was Dan and his bandmates, and we'd go out or he'd show us places in the middle of nowhere. Biking on biker bars, and it was fun. A big influence, big respect. I mean, definitely a big help. And we wrote a song about him. It was "Gotta Go Destructo,"
It's a great song.
Yeah.
And just thinking about other parts of the state for a moment that the Crumbs had the chance to play, thinking about from Central Florida, like Orlando, going out to more the Gulf side to Tampa, even up north, Jacksonville, the Panhandle, Pensacola, Gainesville, again, North Central. Did you all have an opportunity to play a lot of the different cities and towns throughout Florida? If so, what are some of those memories you have?
A lot. I don't know if the State Theater is still open in Tampa. We did a lot of shows there with with No Front and some of the other local bands like Go to Hells. There was the Blue Chair in Tampa. That was another small venue. We did a few shows there. I remember doing a show there with Cavity And that was yeah, that's I think that story was told by Dan, where like, shit went berserk, and the drummer quit, somebody else came in, and anyway, let's see, Jacksonville, we've done a bunch of shows there. Can't remember the name of the place, but shows with the Queers, some of the local, Go to Hells, they used to play in Tampa.
I know there was like the Milk Bar.
The Milk Bar.
Okay, is that where it
Uh,
likely was?
yeah, the Cow House in Tallahassee.
Okay,
What was that other spot in Gainesville? We did a bunch of shows with Belltones there. Can't remember the name now, but it was kind of in the main track.
the covered dish
Maybe.
or the
Yeah,
hardback.
it was more places. I think we played with there was a local band called Raid, and we played a show there with them.
What do you remember about the Radon show?
It was a lot of people. It was great. It was yeah, that was a good show. They were rad. We were pretty good. It was a pretty good show.
Did you notice any differences between the crowds and just how they engaged when you played some of these different towns in Florida?
Yeah, man. You know what? We There was a moment where we were playing, for example, the Foundation in West Palm Beach, and there was a lot of kids, and they were not Miami guys, they were a Miami crowd. It was just a whole different vibe, and there was a lot of like local support there, and every time we played there, it was great, man. It was, they knew the songs, they buy all the merch. Yeah, it was one of those moments where like, wow, dude, we got to go play more often, because like they really like us there,
Yeah. You remember who was bringing you guys to some of these different shows? Who was helping to promote?
What I remember was that I think the drummer Chuck Luz was mostly involved with like, getting the shows back then. He knew a lot of people in Broward because he lived there. So he was super involved in what was like bookings and like doing the flyers and the artworks, and maybe even setting up like small tours in Florida, where you go up to Pensacola, Jacksonville, Tallahassee, Gainesville, Tampa, Orlando, end up back home. I mean, that could be 4 or 5 dates, but I think he would take care of most of those things.
And as you're playing a lot of these shows, I imagine you got so much music. You have the two full-length albums at this point. You have some 7 inches as well that you had put out with the Crumbs. But after the Lo and Behold record, I think that was the last one that was on Lookout, right?
That was the last one on Lookout. Yeah, I mean, they were going through some changes too. They were doing other bands. AFI. I think they were going a little bit more emo-ish too, which it's fine. It's just kind of like a different direction. Some of the first batch of bands that they had were kind of gone. The second batch was like, Mr. T, us, and Weasel, those type of bands were kind of like moving on as well. They were doing Anti-Flag and some other stuff. Yeah, but that was fine. I mean, we went back to Recess Records to do the third LP. Yeah, this one here was that was on Recess Records. That was pretty cool. It was pretty raw. It was very catchy.
Dan did the artwork from that one too, I believe.
Dan did the artwork. Yeah, he did the artwork. It's pretty awesome. It's kind of like noir. It's kind of like a noir artwork. I still like it. And yeah, we did that. We went to Texas for that one. There was a kind of like an infamous studio called Sweatbox. There was a lot of bands that recorded there, and they call it Sweatbox because they didn't have AC. So we went in July, and like we ended up in our tidy whities. Dude, it was hot in there.
And then I also imagine too, being Miami guys, you're used to the sweltering heat
Oh,
anyway.
totally. Yeah, I mean, but being there for a few hours, it was but it was a good record. It was pretty solid. Lots of love and stories about being, just kind of being on the road, losing your mind, that kind of stuff. And then and then after that, dude, it was kind of like every every year, every 2 years, there was a new LP. The fourth one, it was on TKO Records from California. Recess did the vinyl. It was raw. There's a lot of hooks. Some of the themes, it was more of a bad luck on the road, stories of cities and people we'd meet and stuff like that. Then we went to Baltimore for a series of shows. I mean, in that area, there was a couple of local bands that we met and spent some time in Baltimore for a while. There was a few shows, and we met some guys. They had a record label called Insubordination Records, and they were pretty stoked. They were, they wanted to do an LP, and we went back home, and dude got busy writing the 14 new songs on this record, which turned out to be Dade County Trash, which came out on CD only. Dude, it's I think it's my ultimate favorite record. It's got a lot of fast songs. The lyrics are very worked. Every change that we have in every song is it just works perfectly. And there was a lot of work that that went into that record. A lot of work, and like it's very catchy also, and very raw and very dark at the same time. So.
It's got a song on there, Down at Churchill. So was there anything particular that inspired that song?
You know what? Well, Churchill's at that time kind of being the only spot in Miami, and that's kind of like where we spend a lot of time, and a lot of stuff happened, good things, bad things. But it kind of all brought it together. Down at Churchill's, good song. It's and it was an ode to Churchill's. I know they just reopened, and I'm still waiting to go back in, but I saw some footage and it looks like the old Churchill's. Like
How
even
do,
inside.
how
I
do
mean,
the Churchill's bathrooms compare to some of the other bathrooms on some of the tours that you had been on over your time?
well, scale of 1 to 10. This is like this is below 1 or 2. I mean, this is like, yeah. I mean, there's just baggies everywhere. It's like it smells like shit. It's like anyone can go in there. There's no designations. Like, dude, it's like you gotta go. You go. It's like, and they're tiny, and also they have no doors. So if you're in the bathroom at Churchill's, the other ones right in front, there's no door. Like, I think one has a door, but that's about it. But yeah, no, it's probably up there with I don't know, CBGBs. I would think those bathrooms are shitty.
That's funny. So thinking about those other places in Broward, did you all ever play any venues in Broward? If so, where do you remember playing?
You know what? Maybe had a couple of shows at the Poorhouse. Let's see what else. Do the Foundation, the Edge. Remember the Edge? I think it's called differently now. Maybe
It was the Chili Pepper, and now it's Revolution. It's been Revolution. For
Yeah,
quite
so
some time.
we did a bunch of shows there, and those were bigger shows because like we would get paired up with the Beltones and Against Our Authority, and some of the local bands there like Discount and Hudson, and those were really good shows, man. One thing we did was like, we never said no to shows. We'd play a punk picnic. We'd play like, dude, we'd go to somebody's house and play a show, or would go to the Edge of the Chili Pepper, and like it was all a blur, man. It was there was it was wild times. We had a warehouse, back in those days too, and then that's where like there was 3 or 4 other bands, Stay Hit and we shared it with a few other bands that were great, and we did a lot of shows like everywhere, really, in Broward, West Palm, gosh, wherever. Some kid called us up from Orlando. We will play the house. We'll go play the house, man. You know.
Did you all ever get out of the country, Canada, or other parts of the world?
Unfortunately, not. Yeah, I
Was the
mean,
opportunity ever there, just didn't work out?
um, there was opportunities. I think, I think when those opportunities came about, we wanted. By that time, we wanted to keep things short and not do any more like U.S. tours. That it just took a toll on us. Like sometimes we would just like by that time, I think we just wanted to do like, okay, let's go to the Northeast, or let's do 5 dates in the South, or like, we'll just do California and then come back. That kind of deal. Like, it just became tougher as people got older. Also, there was a couple lineup changes that later came in. With a new guitar player, maybe a new bass player, and yeah, most of the yeah, but yeah, well, no, never really got out of the United States. But my
Yeah.
big dream.
I imagine there's a lot of people who love punk and what have you in other parts of the world who were familiar with the Crumbs. Did you ever catch any wind of the band getting really nice write-ups or reviews and any kind of zines of that kind, or just different publications of the era?
Yeah, there was a ton of write-ups on like European zines, and there was a couple of guys that wrote us from Spain. The UK was a possible, possibly that we could end up playing some shows, but it just never materialized, unfortunately. I would say this though, we were big in Belgium.
You're not the first guest who has mentioned their band was big in Belgium. Yeah, that's interesting. And just thinking about in terms of South Florida publications, any particular ones stand out to you who really helped to talk about the Crumbs and what you all were doing?
Oh gosh, man. Trying to think here. We were featured a couple of times on that, like, WVUM. There was a couple of like people that were in the Florida scene, and like, they featured there a couple of times. Yeah, and also big time was we were featured a lot of times in the New Times, a bunch of articles. Tom Smoke Dog, he wrote like 5 or 6 different articles, different eras, different times. Most of the time were when new records would come out, he'll do a feature, and like yeah, there were he was a big help too as far as like putting us on like on written paper.
I was going to ask too, did Tom Bowker, did he also promote any shows you guys were on?
Probably, probably. I mean, he was he was a great help for us. Still a good friend. And yeah, I mean, when he was doing Blowfly, he got me in studio, and we got to sing with Blowfly, and I think we recorded "Should I Say or Should I Go?" But it was like, what was it? Should I bang this big fat hoe?
I was going to say, I know it wasn't the Clash title.
Yeah. So we did that song. That was great, man. Yeah, no, I'm glad I was able to do some stuff with Tom and Blowfly and all
Did
those
you have
guys.
any conversations at all with Clarence Reed Blowfly?
Oh, I mean, he was in the studio. We're just dude, I have photos of me and him drinking quarts and smoking cigarettes, and like I don't know what we're talking about, but it was yeah, he was an original guy. He was kind of like a lot of people don't know this, but he was kind of a pioneer of like what became sleaze funk, that kind of stuff. He even wrote songs for some of the bigger acts, like and he probably knew Sam and Dave, those guys from
Right.
Florida. It's pretty legendary if you think about it.
Absolutely. No doubt
Yeah.
about it. And I think the Blowfly character overshadowed the Clarence Reed, who was the prolific songwriter in so many respects. So,
Absolutely,
yeah.
you're right about that. I mean, like Blowfly kind of became a monster of his own, and people kind of forgot about Clarence Reed, which was like the mastermind of like some great ideas that later became like pretty big.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. What a cool moment, though, to be able to be in the studio with such a music legend and, of course, a Miami icon like
Oh,
Blowfly.
totally, man. No, that was great. I remember that session was, it was fun, man. They made it fun, and all the friends were there, and it was cool, very cool.
Yeah. You all did a split with a couple of Florida bands. Some of them have already come up during our episode here. The Pink Lincolns, Go to Hells, and Against All Authority. That was on Stiff Pole Records. What do you remember
Yeah.
about that release?
Well, mostly I remember that those releases because at that time our rehearsal spot was at Danny Lore's old house. It was called a Butt Hut. It was a tiny shed in the middle of nowhere, and there was some sketchy stuff that had happened. Some human remains have been found. I don't know what
Oh,
year,
no.
but yeah, it was
That's
kind
kind
of.
of sketchy, Raf.
Yeah, you didn't want to get there first. Oftentimes, I would get there first, and like the weeds were overgrown, and you had to sort of like get the high beams and make your way into the shed, and then finally the shed was there, and like open the door and dude get in there as soon as possible and kind of lock the door and hoping somebody would knock the door and say like, hey, it's John. Like, oh, okay, thank God, fucking hey. It was a tiny spot, but yeah, it was me and it was us in Against All Authority. Dude, we were super tight, always have, and we wanted to do a split, and Steph Paul was like, hey, Pink Lincolns Against All Authority, Go to Hells, in us, like it was pretty good. I mean, that one came out. It was everybody put on a pretty good song and like worked out, man, worked out.
Yeah, that's one of my personal favorite releases because I also love the aesthetic of the Florida on there and the state and just kind of reminds you of the 50s and 60s kitschy postcards.
Big time.
So it's
Yeah.
fun.
It's
Yeah,
not there's it's I mean it just reminds you like it's not easy getting out of Florida for a lot of these bands, it's tough, man. We don't have a ton of zines. We don't have a ton of radio stations. We don't have a ton of record labels like other states do. And a lot of the stuff that happens as far as band, making music and stuff like that, you kind of, you do it on your own, you team up and that's how you get ahead. It's just a lot of the stuff. It's just effort and just doing it yourself, really, from
sure.
scratch. Yeah.
Right. Oh yeah, no doubt.
But it gives you a sense of accomplishment. It's like, wow, it's like we really did that. Yeah, we all did it all together. So
And
I think maybe that's probably people always ask, what is punk? I mean, that's probably like a little bit of what punk is. It's like having really no options, no alternatives, and like having to do it all yourself, your friends, and like coming up with ideas, failing and doing it again, and figuring it out. What I mean?
exactly. Did you ever have any moments where people were heckling you? You're the front man of the band. Did that ever happen, or any situation where things got so crazy you had to stop a show?
A few times. I mean, I can from the get go. I remember a show in Chicago. We got there right when we had to. We were on the road for a while. We got there right when we had to play. We were all kind of cranky. We got on stage, and I get a couple bottles thrown at me, like beer bottles thrown at me personally, and then one lands on me, and I got really pissed. I mean, we were cranky, being in that van for so long, and
Was that Fireside Bowl?
I think it was a fireside ball, and yeah, I mean, I hopped off the stage and I chased one of the guys, and I ended up grabbing him, and this whole thing happened, and it was unfortunate. We got into a scuffle. I don't think there was any real punches thrown, but like, yeah, it was a bad moment. But yeah, I mean, like a couple of those things happen on the road. People spitting at you. It's very 70s punk, but like I don't appreciate
I mean, I don't blame you. Nobody wants to be spit on.
yeah,
So,
you know, dude, I mean, I don't know, stolen microphones, people that, steal pedals or like, gosh, I mean, dude, the worst thing is places that we've spent nights with, and like worst places, like just horrible places, like where, there's like pimps and whores, and like, maybe we don't have much money after the gig, and we ended up in some sketchy place, and kind of sleep with one eye open. you know, yes, those experiences they're great when you're young, but when you get a little bit older, you're like, oh man, fuck. And that's kind of how you lose people. It's like,
sure.
what I mean? Bass player will be like, oh, dude, I don't want to see a place like that anymore. It's like, a guitar player is like, that's like, that's wearing off. It's wearing off, and yeah, stuff like that happens. But
Did you ever have to stay at a squat when you were on some of these tours?
a bunch of times. One we did was in Berkeley. I think that night we played with Turbo Negro in some squat. That was pretty. It was, dude, it was like an old warehouse with 3 stories. There was a lot of people there. Um, let's see, dude, people's garages. A lot of most of the time, just like wood floors in the Midwest in the cold. Um, but you do it, man. I don't know about my guys or like people I've played with, but I love writing music. I love going out. These are some of the things you trade. You trade a lot of comfort. You trade schedules. You trade, income. You take careers. You do it all for the music, right? You do it. Yeah, there's a lot of unfortunate things that happen. A lot. I mean, shitholes, not being paid not being paid at all, or like, long stretches or van breakdowns where like you have to cancel dates and sort of make up and burn bridges. A lot of bridges burned, but at the end of the day, Jeff, I think it's like, if you really like music, and if like, dude, if you like writing songs and composing, getting a band together and like, putting yourself out there, all that stuff, it's like, you can deal with.
Right.
I can deal with all those blows, dude, as long as like, right now I'm thinking, I'm going to studio next week. I'm recording my third EP with my newer band, Marching Party, and I'm pretty stoked. Tonight we have a show. I'm with you today. I mean, that's fucking fantastic. I mean, I'm not going to, dude, regrets. I have tons, man. I have a Bible of regrets, but hey, it's that's life, right? And you just keep going, and like people ask me, so what's your next what's your favorite record, what's your next thing? It's like, my favorite record is the one I haven't done yet. And it's like, maybe I go to studio next week, and like, I get pretty I get excited, and all my talent has gone there, and it's finally out, and surround myself with like good people, good players, and go from there, man. It's that's the essence, I think.
Right. No, I think that's fantastic that you're still so active and passionate about what you're doing. And the very last record I want to talk about that the Crumbs put out, it's about 15 years old at this point, and that was Gator Kicks, which has a very Florida cover as well. with the alligator and the sunglasses on it. So, any memories you have of recording that one? There it is.
Yeah, there it is, dude. I love this record. That was with we did that with our friend Chuck Livin. He his label. He's a great photographer, but just a great person. And we used to work together many years ago. Um, at Barnes and Noble when we were going to college. He's a great guy, but he's always been like,
If you could, though, talk about that because you mentioned the photographer aspect of it. And that's so important, too, the people who were taking photos at that
yeah,
time. So, talk more about Chuck if you can, and then some other folks that come to mind who you can remember as just taking a lot of the photographs of the Crumbs at
yeah. I
back
mean,
in that time.
there was a few. Chuck did a lot of photos throughout the years. I mean, he even did photos last year with my new band at the punk rock bowling that were phenomenal. He was doing photos with he was kind of like on the road with Guitar Wolf from Japan. So he took a lot of their photos in Vegas, a few other places. But we met up and he ended up taking a few photos of ourselves. But before that, yeah, I mean, he took a lot of photos for Crumbs, throughout the years. My good friend Nikki Kane, we were together at some point, but like kind of like early '90s, she took a lot of photos. She lives in New York City now, but she was a great photographer. She took a lot of photos in a dark room. She had a dark room, and like she would hand me a whole stack of like, hey, here are I don't know, 8x10s like photos, like real photos, and I have a bunch stacked in there somewhere. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, a lot of times it was just friends or girlfriends of the band guys that were taking photos. I would use them, but yeah, it looks like this one was. Yeah, this one was with Nikki Kane. She took the photo right outside the Edge or Chili Pepper. There was an old abandoned building that was about a bit torn down. 2 blocks away, we were just walking around with her, and like we found an incredible setting, and we just ended up there. Yeah, she also took a lot of photos of I had a side project called The Basics. She took a bunch of photos with that. But just overall, and I think, Chuck, her, and a few other people, can't recall right now. But
Sure. Did you know Gator Kicks would be the last Crumbs record?
in a way, yes, because I was already sort of like planning to move out here, and it kind of coincided with that was recorded in 2009, and a few months after that I ended up leaving. um I didn't know it was going to be the last one. I knew it was going to be the last for a year or two, maybe three, because I didn't know I was going to stay here so long, man. I thought maybe I'd do like a couple of years and then come back and pick up where I left off, but never happened. We did record an EP. Maybe this was maybe 4 years ago, and that's on Spotify and all the streaming and all that. But yeah, that was it was a four songs like 4 years ago, all brand new songs. That was the last LP, but there was an EP after that that was pretty good. I liked it. It was a little bit different, but it was very catchy. Yeah, I don't know where it went, but it's up on the platforms.
Right. There's a lot of music that you can definitely listen to from the Crumbs, and it's just wonderful to hear more of the backstory for so much of it. And you still being very active with what you're doing right now musically too. How is it different considering where you are in life now than where you were when you were playing with the Crumbs?
Well, I think, dude, the main difference is it's really like just the age factor. For example, I'm very involved with like my new band, marching party. It's all, we were a three-piece, but we're older guys. Those two guys, they have their own business. That's kind of their main focus. And and it's different because I respect what they're doing outside of like music. I respect their schedules. Some of the guys are married. You know, uh, before I think it was like, things were pretty wild with the Crumbs. I mean, it was just, we all drank a lot. We all played in the same warehouse. We hung out a lot, shared a lot, and got in trouble together, got out of trouble together, and things now. I would say this though. When we get together and play music, even with my new projects, it's all out. I mean, it's just you leave everything on the door and just crank it up to 11 and just go for it. And same with the shows, and get involved with different side projects. This is one I did maybe like 6 years ago. This is a band called Tiger Tank. That record came out with I don't know if you remember Burger Records. They were pretty much very active in Southern Cal, and then they folded a couple of years ago. But that's one of the last records they put out, and they sent us to we did a tour in Texas, ended up in South by Southwest with a lot of good bands. I mean, just it was phenomenal. But
Was that the largest music festival that you ever had a chance to perform at?
That's one of them. The other one was in Baltimore with the Queers and Sloppy Seconds, and that was the Insubordination Fest. And they brought in all their bands, and they had giant stage. It was indoors, but it was a big venue. That was pretty big. With South by Southwest, there's multiple stages. So you sort of like people kind of like switch and move around and whatever band they want to see. And then, there's kind of herds moving around. But like, yeah, that was pretty big. I think the biggest show we ever played was at the Masquerade in Atlanta. And that was us. And then it was the Swinging Utters and then the Queers. And that was pretty massive. The place was sold out. We had a backstage with like, little snacks and booze and all that. And I was like, oh man, wow. It's like, this is what it feels like, right? It's like
Feels
cool.
like to be a rock star.
Yeah. But even then, by that time, we didn't have the best equipment. We could have done better, but hey, it was that time.
What do you think the legacy is of the Crumbs?
You know what? I'm just happy to give something back. I mean, like, I grew up watching shows here, like the small bands in garage and homes and and just to be part of that. Like that's it. And I think we were lucky enough to like find some decent labels, very good labels in the beginning that can kind of like push us to do more and keep going. And after multiple records, I think maybe the legacy is just that it didn't matter how rough things were at the time. You just gotta keep going. Keep going and keep putting out stuff, keep getting some ideas and never forget your friends, venues, radio stations, podcasts, stuff, the people you work with closely that help you build the legacy you want. It's all connected. I mean, it's labels and magazines and all that stuff. Like, a lot of people have helped us out on our way here, and I love that. But at the end of the day, it's just like, dude, just being part of the history of Florida,
No doubt. And it's just been so wonderful having you on, Raf, to take us through that journey from the earliest beginnings to where you are present day. So I just want to say thank you for being such a fantastic guest. And we're going to get ready to close things out. So I'd love to give you the last word. Any final thoughts you'd like to share to the folks out there, both checking this episode out on YouTube, but also listening to it as well?
Yeah, man, Jeff, just want to give you a big shout out for you, giving me this platform to kind of talk about things and like to go like kind of like go way back into like the vault where like I really never thought like, bringing back so many memories in such a short period of time. And all the bands we played with, Load, hanging out with Bobby back in those days, No Front, Pink Lincolns, Against All Authority, the Belltones, so many bands, man, Basics, and so many bands, and just being part of Churchill's and kind of like the evolution of like where we are now in Florida, which I think. It's still, the history is still writing, but yeah, just want to shout out to like everyone that came out, everyone that still support, and I'll still be doing music for a while. So if somehow I end up in Florida again, it's like you guys will have the unfortunate event of seeing me again.